Sorry, thank you. Good morning and welcome to our September meeting of BCP Cabinet. Got an interesting agenda today, so look forward to getting into that. I'm just going to move to our Democratic Services Officer now to refer to our housekeeping document. Sarah.
Good morning. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If you are accessing via Teams and you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, please note that other than the fire alarm test, which is due to take place between 10 and 10:15 a.m, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Braidley Road, under the flyover or in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's move into the formal agenda. And agenda item 1 is apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Barron, who I know is on council business in Poole, and Councillor Rampton. Are any other apologies? Councillor Dunlop will be arriving during the course of the meeting. No? Okay, thank you. So then we move to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Leader. And I wonder if I could also ask you to record my apologies for only attending virtually. So I don't know whether I'm here or not for the purposes of some of the meeting. But I would like to make the following declaration of pecuniary interest on both my behalf and that of my spouse, in line with my published Register of Members' interests. In the agenda, the update on the Council New Build Housing and Acquisition Strategy. I'm a shareholder and a director of a company which owns a share of 89%, which I understand is being considered for purchase. This is in accordance with my declaration of interests. While I'm attending this meeting virtually and hence not formally part of the meeting, I will withdraw from the meeting virtually for this item and not take any part in the discussion. By way of further transparency, I have not part of any discussion in connection with the proposed purchase, nor have I had sight of any of the confidential papers which are to be discussed. Thank you, Leader, and I just Officer and Democratic Services for their advice and support in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Green. Okay, we have just lost Councillor Mike Green. So what we'll do is, I believe we've already been notified for they're recording the same DPI. So we'll take that as read and we will move forward. And if Councillor Green wants to add anything further when his connectivity returns, we can get to that. Okay, so are there any further disclosures of pecuniary interest? I'm not seeing that, so let's move on to agenda item 3, which is the confirmation of minutes.
Apologies, okay. Chair, could I?
Please do, Councillor, you might carry on.
Sorry, apologies for that. May I record exactly the same declaration as Councillor Nicola? I can reread it if that's required by the monitoring officer. Otherwise, can you take that as read, please?
Yeah, absolutely fine. We just had confirmation that's fine as is. So we'll record the same DPI for both Councillors Mike and Nicola Green. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then moving back to confirmation of minutes, agenda item 3. I'm formally proposing that. We've got the minutes as put in front of us, so happy to take any comments on that. I believe Councillor Broadhead, you are seconding.
Happy to second. Thank you
very much. So any comments on the minutes for our previous meeting? Okay, I'm not seeing any comments there. So we will move to agenda item 4, which is public issues. I can advise you that there have been no questions, statements or petitions submitted by members of the public on this occasion. So we will move forward to agenda item 5. And at that point, I'll ask the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Lawrence Williams, to join us. What I'm going to do with this item is we moved to agenda item 6 effectively because the recommendations were solely for the finance update paper. So thank you for joining us, Councillor Williams. I'll introduce the paper now. Please, Councillor Broadhead is seconding, and then we'll come directly to you as the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny to introduce that discussion and also the recommendations that came from that meeting. Thank you. Okay, so we're on agenda item 6, which is a finance update, including the Q1 22-23 budget monitoring report. First, in starting this, please can I record my thanks to Adam Richards and his team. This is a paper we were expecting at the back end of our September Cabinet meeting, and I asked for it to be brought forward to this meeting in light of the updated guidance from DLUX and the outgoing Secretary of State Greg Clark in terms of the flexible use of capitalisation regulations. I thought it was really important that we did that because we had a material part of our budget that was reliant on the previous regulations in terms of flexible use of capital receipts, which we were looking to use a potential beach hut special purpose vehicle to effectively allow us to fund our use flexible use of capital receipts to fund our transformation expenditure. Government subsequently have updated that guidance, which would have ruled that option out. So where there's a material change to our budget, I thought it'd be really helpful if we then brought that paper forward so we could have the really useful meeting we had with Overview and Scrutiny, and also Cabinet colleagues and wider Council can see the detail in that. What I've just, in terms of the paper itself, there's a number of recommendations, but in introducing it, I think there are two really clear and key parts to talk about. One is we do have a really ambitious transformation programme, and that has a cost which we need to fund. So there's a piece there about how are we going to fund the cost of transformation, which I'll come to. And then there's the piece which talks about the medium-term financial plan gap and the process for balancing that for 22-23. Sorry, it'd be 23-24 next year, and we'll spend some time talking about that as well. So in terms of the first part of that, and what is our transformation programme? Well, we've already saved £50 million a year recurring for the authority from bringing the three councils together, and we now have an ambition to save at least another £50 million through our transformation programme going forward. And the cost of that is £50 million. We are looking to extend that and extend the ambition of that to stretch out to £75 million to deliver those recurring savings that will be in excess of £50 million. So we're looking to become one of the most advanced digitally enabled councils in the country, one of the most efficient councils in the country, and that is because as an administration we believe in small state, low tax, and we're proud to be delivering that. We also want to do that in a way that enhances our long-term financial sustainability, and our political position has been that we do not wish to sell the majority of our assets to fund that, and we will look to explore other ways of funding it rather than purely selling assets. We had from the previous leader of the council on Friday at Overview and Scrutiny a clear statement that the previous administration's plan to fund that cost. Apologies for that. We have our regular Wednesday fire alarm. I have asked that we now make sure that either can be moved or we will be looking at the start time of Cabinet meetings going forward. And we hope to have a resolution on that by our 30th of September Cabinet meeting. And I was just saying, so effectively we are looking at ways to fund our ambitious transformation programme. And we had from the previous administration reiterated on Friday Overview and Scrutiny clarity that their plan was to sell assets and also to use our reserves to fund it, which is one solution. What we've said we wanted to do was to explore how we can use our assets rather than sell them to fund transformation. And that's exactly why we were looking at using the Beach SPV plan there. We're now no longer able to do that. So what this report talks about is other options for funding that. So be really clear, we're not reducing our ambition around transformation. We believe we can make a further £50 million of savings over the next 3 years, and then so we're maintaining that ambition. What we will do is we've been in dialogue with government in terms of looking at a capitalisation direction. So we've asked for extra flexibility from government to be able to borrow directly and cleanly to fund our transformation agenda. We have an amazing payback period, under 2 years effectively. So we feel that the right thing is to be able to borrow to fund that over the period of time we deliver those savings. I'm delighted, and I thank again our Chief Exec and our finance colleagues who've worked with me and civil service colleagues over the summer recess, and our civil service colleagues in Deluxe have responded at amazing pace and given us really great support in terms of last Friday providing me with a letter that indicated they were minded to support us in a capitalisation direction of £20 million, which is a cost for this year. So that's great clarity that we've got that. There are some things we need to do to work with government to deliver that, which I'll touch on shortly. But at least we've now got some real clarity in terms of this year's budget. The government are minded to support us to borrow. What I've also asked our officers to look at and support us through is a review of what assets we could sell that are non-core assets for us, and also to look at work with Deluxe colleagues on other financial mechanisms that are applicable to flexible use of capital receipts regulations. That work is ongoing, and we look forward to regularly reporting back to Cabinet and Council on as we further those discussions with government, but also understand our own flexibilities and possibilities around how we're going to fund that. Then the second part of the paper looks at the medium-term financial plan gap for 23-24, which stands in this paper at £33.9 million. To reflect, we've in year we put £14 million of assumptions around cost of living, and next year £18 million. So we've had £42 million movement in this year and next year on cost of living. So we would have had a net positive position of £8.1 million for 23-24 outside of cost of living. I've been in dialogue, most of yesterday, with colleagues around the country in terms of other councils and the pressures they're facing around cost of living as well. So our position isn't unique, but it is material. It's a bigger gap than we would want to be bringing into the budget setting process that we're in. Hence why you'll see a couple of recommendations in the report. One is to say that no new spending should be committed to by this council unless the Chief Financial Officer and myself, as the portfolio holder of finance, sign it off until at such a point as we get to a balanced budget. I've also asked for a standing agenda item in terms of financial update to be brought to all future Cabinet meetings until such a point that we've been able to be more clearly balance the budget for 23-24, and I took on board the feedback from Overview and Scrutiny about that being a positive step in terms of being really increasingly transparent around our budget plans, and welcomed the debate and support from Overview and Scrutiny, particularly the Chair as well. And lastly, just to tease out, we've got a recommendation to comply with the minded to letter in terms of capitalisation that says we should move towards setting a balanced budget or working out how we would do that by our next end of September Cabinet meeting. So we look forward to doing that. Just to put in some context, 2 years ago when we took he became the administration of this council, we had a funding gap in the region of £50 million. So we are used to solving these problems, and very much look forward to working with officers and cabinet colleagues to move forward that balancing act positively as we go forward, both into the end of this month and then before we set a budget in February for next year. So if I perhaps now bring it, I'll move to the Councillor Broadhead to, I believe, coming to second this item. Sorry, very long introduction, but it was a detailed paper and I thought it was worth spending some time on. So Councillor Broadhead, and then I'll move to Councillor Williams. Bill.
Thank you, Leader, and very happy to second the paper. And I think it's absolutely worthwhile having that extended explanation of the situation, the challenges that we're facing, and our calm, confident plans to deal with them. As the Leader said, we've got those two major challenges ahead of us. The first one being the transformation programme. And again, I'd like to put on record our thanks to our not only our internal team, Adam, Graham, and the whole finance team, and others who have been working at pace throughout the summer, but also the really exceptional response we've had from colleagues in the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, who have turned around in a very short period of time our ask to spread that cost of the transformation over a longer period into that minded decision that we received last week. It's really welcome news. It gives us that clarity as we're trying to both balance the budget for next year, but also not put at risk that very ambitious transformation programme, which, let's be clear, is not just about saving money. It's also about dramatically improving the council services that we are offering by becoming more digitally enabled, but by improving our customer services functions as well, so that people's interaction with the local authority is positive, not only because a better customer service provision is exactly what we should be providing, but also that in and of itself saves a lot of time and effort and money as well. So it is all heading in the right direction, and I'm really looking forward to continuing those discussions with DLUC and the new incoming Secretary of State, Simon Clarke, as well, who we welcome, who has experience in local government and has experience in the Treasury as well. So really, I couldn't think of a better partner for us to be working with as we move through those discussions for the transformation programme. The second point that you raised about the ongoing cost of living and fuel crisis that all of us are facing, residents, businesses, but also local authorities, and the way that we are going to deal with that as well. As you mentioned, Leader, we've provisionally earmarked around an extra £42 million that pressure puts on the local authority. And bearing in mind, this is a pressure that we didn't even know about back in February, because Putin's war in Ukraine hadn't even started at that point. So it has come out of the blue. It has come out after we have set our balanced budget for the year. But as you pointed out, Chairman, we're used to dealing with this. These are very big, very humbling figures, but we are a large, confident authority. We've got a great team around us, both within Cabinet and within officers, and I'm really highly confident that we can rise to the challenge of demonstrating that we can definitively offer a balanced budget by the end of this month. And actually, Chair, as the situation moves forward, and let's face it, it could get even worse during the winter, that we'll continue with those regular financial updates to continue to demonstrate ahead of the budget setting next year that we will definitively have not just a balanced budget, but a continuation in providing the services that people expect. A little bit of extra background. In some of my other roles, we have extensive conversations with other local authorities across the country, and not only is that position shared by the local authorities, but many are in an even worse position than us, because I think we took the prudent steps of identifying those cost pressures very early on, and doing some intensive work with Cabinet colleagues earlier on this year to take the first steps to mitigate those problems. But talking to colleagues around the country, the kind of general feeling is if local authorities got a full business rate uplift, they'd still probably need 7 or 8% extra just to deal with that cost of living a situation, and then they would still have pressures as well. So we are in this boat with the rest of local government. I'll certainly continue to use my various roles to continue those conversations with DLUC and with the new Secretary of State to make sure that we can provide the necessary assistance to all local authorities to deal with this. But in the meantime, we've got a job to do. We've done it before, and over the next couple of months, I'm really confident that we'll rise to the challenges ahead of us and continue to provide those services and give that confidence to DLUC, who have demonstrated the confidence in us by offering that minded to decision to help us fund transformation by spreading it over a larger period, based on us demonstrating that we can continue what we've done before. So a challenge ahead of us, a challenge faced by many, but working together closely with government and closely with colleagues, both cabinet colleagues and senior officers, I'm really confident that we can do it in a calm, collected way whilst protecting the services to some of our most vulnerable as well. And actually that point about the most vulnerable, you know, we continue to have significant pressures in our children's and adult services, and the investment in those areas are absolutely critical to make sure that we are protecting those who need help the most over what will be potentially a very difficult winter for most people. So lots of work to do, but confident that we've got the plans in place to be able to demonstrate that we are very much up to the challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So we've had that proposed and seconded. I'm now going to move to Councillor Lawrence Williams, Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, to talk through about this paper, and if you could end up put the recommendations from your committee too, and then I'll move to wider Cabinet colleagues to speak before I bring the rest of the Cabinet in. So Councillor Williams, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very grateful. We had a lengthy 4+ hours and often boisterous meeting last Friday, the 2nd of September. Actions required for consideration by Cabinet and publications of a response within 2 months from today's date. Cabinet Agenda 6, the financial update, including Q1 22-23 budget monitoring report. The committee recommends to Cabinet that recommendations 7 and 8 in the report be amended to insert the phrase "and the resilience reserves be restored," to read as follows. 7 agrees to place an update on the financial strategy as a standing Cabinet agenda item until such time as there is a balanced budget delivered for 23-24 and the resilience reserves are restored. Item 8 agrees that no new financial commitment will be made until such time as there is a balanced budget for 23-24, other than the specific agreement of the Chief Financial Officer in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, and the resilience reserves are restored. The committee recommends to Cabinet the following additional recommendations: that the Futures Fund be suspended and all additional commitments be closed till further notice, that the future place ambitions and funding should be reviewed. I think it's worth letting you know about the voting on the recommendations, which was 6-4, 4 against and no abstentions. The committee also passed the following. The committee agreed that during this period of reconsidering the in-year budget for 22-23, scrutiny should be increased to reflect the monthly budget updates to Cabinet, which could be in the form of a single item scrutiny meeting for which all councillors are invited. And the voting for this was 5-4, 4 against and 1 abstention. There were some moves which were not carried at the meeting. The following moves which were not carried was that recommendation 4 be amended to delete the word further and replace it with traditional and read as follows. It's recommended that Cabinet agrees to explore options across the Council to deliver revenue through traditional commercialisation and review fees and charges as the response to the cost of living crisis. The voting for that was 5-4, 6 against, and I used my casting vote to vote against. The committee recommends to Cabinet the following additional recommendations. In order to strengthen the case of the government, the committee recommends that the Cabinet member responsible for finance be replaced immediately and roles of leader and finance leader permanently separated. The voting for that was 5 for, 6 against, and with me using my casting vote to vote against. And finally, the following report was considered at ONS, but is not an item on the Cabinet agenda, but I have included the committee's decisions for your reference. The commercialisation of beach huts assets through a special purpose vehicle, wholly or majority owned by the Council. At the reconvened meeting of the Corporate Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of September, the committee agreed that the recommendations in the report as follows. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee notes that the Council is no longer pursuing the commercialisation of the beach huts via an SPV. And finally, the voting for that was 5 for, none against, and 5 abstentions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much for that. That's really helpful summary of the meeting, and yeah, it's great to be able to be there for. I think it was a reasonable amount of time, wasn't it? And thank you for facilitating getting that meeting in before this cabinet meeting. I thought it was really helpful to have that reflection, and I was glad to be able to answer all the questions that were put to me. So thank you for your. Thank you for your help there. Okay, so we've got, and so now I'll ask, we as cabinet, we need to consider the recommendations from scrutiny that have been put to us. First, I will bring in cabinet colleagues. I'll bring in members of the wider council, and in doing so, come to Councillor Hadley. Andy.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah. Yes, the careful monthly scrutiny of the new expenditure is very welcome. I think that's the right thing to be doing in scrutiny, and there was a long and very useful debate about information which has literally only just come to light for many of us outside of cabinet. Regarding your introduction, I'm really sorry that you keep on repeating falsehoods and it doesn't make them true. The Unity Alliance was making the best attempts we could to live within the means of our taxpayers through the extraordinary post-COVID lockdown period, and as you've outlined, you're having to do the same through the current government's preference to put lots more money in the energy companies rather than to help households out. The long leases that you appear to be negotiating are the equivalent of a sale, and they may yet be disallowed by the government, and we may well be forced to sell those assets. So I think we need to be clear about some of those challenges. You keep saying low tax, small state, but our staffing levels have increased and we have very heavy agency costs. What we seem to be doing is creating a very high debt organisation with struggling and disintegrating services, and we need to change that. We're asking for 75 million. It seems that we will be lucky to get 20 million pounds with many strings attached. And that also includes significant interest payments. The interest payments in the first half year alone are £436,000. And again, we have a claim that the transformation is ambitious, but we are 4 years into transformation, and we still have an awful lot of work to do to bring our staff teams together and to unify the experience for the residents. So, we do need to be honest about the difficulty, the struggle that we all have in trying to make this a better place for everyone living within BCP. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. I'll just I'll respond to that directly before we bring colleagues in. So we've been clear historically. I think there's some inaccuracies in what you said, Councillor Hadley. We've been really quite clear about where we can use debt for in this authority. We're saying we need to be much more ambitious and invest much more in assets across our conurbation. That's exactly what we're doing. So we're not bringing forward any debt that isn't linked to a strong business case going forward. You talked about transformation. I just put on record again. We've put positively already saved £50 million a year recurring for our taxpayers. Delivering transformation has allowed us to do back-to-back council tax freezes, which has kept £11 million in people's pockets. So in fact, it's not a time when we're delivering small state low tax. We've saved £50 million already in efficiency savings, and we've back-to-back council tax freezes. So as a matter of fact, that's exactly what we have done. We're now going further, and we're taking the transformation plan we inherited, and we're going much further with it, being much more ambitious with it. We've added an extra layer of £7 million at the back end of the programme, and on top of that, we're actually investing further in transformation transformation, service-based transformation of children and adults. So we are being the embodiment of small state low tax in doing that. It's something I'll be very proud to have done for the last 2 years, and we'll be very proud to carry on doing. If somebody's going to fight for our council taxpayers, this Conservative administration will fight for those taxpayers, and we can have a really clear choice at the next election in May. Do you want to support your poor People's Party, high tax? Do you want to support Liberal Democrat Party, who are high tax and on record for saying that, or do you want to support the Conservative administration, who will do everything in our power to deliver a small state low tax government? Okay, thank you. I'll move on to no wider members of council looking to come in, so I'll move on to cabinet. Before I do that, actually, Councillor Williams, I will just mention. I had some feedback in terms of the meeting and the technical decision around who when the reports were released or not released. So technically, I did formally suggest to officers that we were not in a position to release those reports. My understanding is we weren't in a position to, because those were external reports, but we hadn't had the permission to release them, and that advice was supported by our senior officer colleagues and the monitoring officers. So if it was worth clarifying that, hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so now let's move on to cabinet colleagues to discuss. So we've been discussing both the report recommendations in front of us and also the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And first, I'll go to Councillor Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you to Lawrence Williams' report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for Corporate and Community Affairs. I must focus on the last two recommendations which have been placed before us, which relates to the Future Fund and also to Future Places. I think because of the developments at pace of government of minding to support the council with some £20 million, it does actually start to change some of the considerations. So I think the Future Funds is asked to be suspended. Well, I don't think that is appropriate at the present time. It is a matter of any particular funding opportunities or proposals to come to Cabinet and necessarily to go to full council. And therefore, there is all the mechanisms there to actually ensure that the Future Fund is managed in the right way. So I don't think that's an appropriate change there. And the second one refers to Future Places, our arm's length company delivering regeneration. I think this is a very important part of the council's proposals and initiatives to bring forward many opportunities to bring forward redevelopment. And in fact, only last night, all members were able to attend a briefing from Future Places about several of the proposals and schemes that they're currently working on, which have tremendous opportunities for financial returns to the council. So therefore, again, I don't think it's appropriate at the present time to actually embargo anything on Future Places. If there are proposals which have financial issues, they will come before Cabinet and they'll come before full council where it can be fully debated. So I think those two recommendations are out with at the present time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nigel. That's appreciated, and I agree with you on that. Do I have any other cabinet colleagues wishing to come in? We've got a significant amount of work ahead of us. We've put in extra meetings in terms of officers as we move forward to balance this situation. We've got discussions which we're furthering with DLUX as well, and we will be bringing this back monthly. So I think we've really clearly set the position now. We've set also that that we have a number of options in terms of how to actually fund the transformation programme as well. So we've got more clarity and confidence that we will be balanced this year, and now we've got work streams in place to balance next year. So are there any questions or comments? So then what I'll do, I'll just respond in terms of the recommendations. Thank you very much for those and for your committee's time on those. I do really agree with the points Nigel Brooks has made. Any Futures Fund decision will be made by this Cabinet or full council in light of our financial situation. We've put in a quite clear recommendation in the report in front of you that no further financial commitments should be made without the effective sign-off of the Section 151 officer and myself. outside of a normal formal cabinet paper. So I think that is not necessary. I think it also speaks to approaches. You know, we've seen from the, and as Councillor Hadley pointed out earlier on, the response from the previous administration was to literally stop everything, cancel all the priorities. You know, I think that's we need to take this situation very seriously. We need to come up with a balanced budget, but there's going to be areas where we will need to invest for the good of our residents, and also to make long-term, not short-term decisions for our both residents and also our financial situations. And absolutely, in terms of future places, our position remains that we have a wealth of assets, but we need to be ambitious about how we use them. We need to invest in them. And we can deliver. We believe we can deliver high housing. We're going to see some further paper down the agenda in terms of our ambitions around housing, regeneration, which we're going to move on to shortly, and how future places and use of our assets and regeneration can be a massive part of our long-term financial sustainability. So again, I think that's quite a short-sighted recommendation. So I'm proposing that we don't accept those, and I haven't heard any support of them. So unless any other cabinet colleagues wish to come in, I'll move to the recommendations as put. Okay, so we'll move to that now. All those in favour of the recommendations put, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. So again, appreciate the support from colleagues as we move the situation forward. Thank you very much, Chair. And I look forward to, as and when there are further overview and scrutiny committees around that, to embracing that discussion fully. So thank you. We now move forward to agenda item 7, quite succinctly actually and helpfully, which is the BCP Future Places appointment of independent chair and non-executive directors paper. Councillor Broadhead, I believe you're going to propose this, and I'm really positive and encouraging news. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll resist the temptation, as I always have done in the past, of this paper to go down the full history of why we got here. Except to say, as we all know, the ambitions of Future Places are to unlock the £3 billion worth of gross development potential that we have in our council-owned sites across the BCP region. We've now got an extremely talented team in place in this wholly municipally owned company, not designed for profit, but designed to not just take forward the delivery of those regeneration sites at pace, but to do so in a place-based approach with the stewardship principles at their heart, and to embrace the concept of long-term patient capital. One of the benefits of having a regeneration arm that's fully owned by the council is the focus is not on profit, it's not on maximising the amount of units to get on a site, but it is to take that regeneration seriously and to make sure that we are fostering the long-term ambitions of our place when looking at these opportunities. And the fact that we have even before this paper, attracted some of the most respected people in the country who are around that place-based regeneration approach to come and work for us says an awful lot. And what we do with this paper is take it even further. So it was just under a year ago that we took the first business plan through the council for Future Places, and within that business plan we outlined the intention to appoint a non-executive director, independent non-executive director chairman, and a number of non-executive director NEDs as well, again independent, to bring outside experience to the council-owned company. And also within that paper, we agreed that until then, that very similar to other council-owned companies, both the leader and myself would sit as unpaid directors on that company to get it up and running, put in a lot of work, and to make sure that the team was in place, and then to pass over the reins once those NEDs were in place. We had bold ambitions at that point to try and get somebody of substance to be our independent chair of that council company, but never, I think, in my wildest dreams did I think that we would be able to land somebody of the calibre of our recommendation here, which is Lord Bob Kerslake, who has just a fantastic track record and is really highly regarded, not just by government but also by industry as as well. And the very fact that he has agreed to come and chair our municipally owned regeneration arm, which has already, as in previous discussions on this, got extremely positive reaction from Homes England. I think they described us as an exemplar of how regeneration should be done in a local authority setting. But to do so and to land somebody like Bob, I think shows the calibre of the team and I think the validation and the credibility of what we're trying to do. So today's paper is about approving Bob as Lord Kerslake as the independent chair, and also to approve the two further NEDs to come on in a short space of time as well. Lord Kerslake, I think, is quite rightly keen to be part of that process as well. So we don't have those other two NEDs at this stage, but we will have them at pace. The paper talks a little bit about Lord Kerslake's bio, which is, of course, extensive. Not only is he currently the chair of a number of similar entities, he's chair of BFirst, which is Barking and Dagenham's Council Regen Company. He's a chair of Peabody, the chair of the London Collective Investment Vehicle, London CIV, but also is chair of a number of other bodies such as Sheffield Theatres, Sheffield Hallam University, the chair of the Centre for Public Scrutiny, president of the LGA, and chair of the Stockport Mayoral Development Corporation. That's his background within this sphere, but as many will know, he's extremely respected in government because he is the former head of the civil service, did lead what is now DLUC, which was at the time the Department for Communities and Local Government, and indeed was the first chief executive of the HCA, the Homes and Communities Agency. So if there was anybody that is more experienced in the field both of government and regeneration that we could land to be our independent chair of Future Places, I haven't heard of them, and I think it's a real boost of confidence that he's agreed to come down and help us on our journey. So the paper is approving Lord Kerslake's appointment. It is also recommending that Council delegates the appointment to the two further independent NEDs to the Chief Executive as a shareholder representative in consultation with Lord Kerslake, and to bring that appointment back for Council for further information. And also with the appointment of Lord Kerslake, my job as interim chair, unpaid chair of Future Places will be done as intended. So I will be stepping down from the board, and also the leader will be stepping down from the board of Future Places as planned when the other appointments have been made as well. We then get into the stage of delivery, and I'm absolutely delighted that within only the next, I think, cabinet cycle, we are bringing forward the first swathe of outline business cases for some of the projects that Future Places have been working on. And I think what we will see with the outline business cases and the proposals that they're recommending to us at that stage, already a demonstration of exactly why we created Future Places. So really, really pleased that we've managed that Bob has agreed to come and be part of the team, and I look to Cabinet for approval. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I will, wholeheartedly second that. So we've got that in front of us, and quite clearly the reason why we're not aware of anybody who has a better reputation across this field is because there isn't anybody who's a better reputation across this field. We've been able to secure the confidence of the eminent regeneration specialist, as you said quite rightly, ex-head of the civil service, has successfully set up and landed a number of urban regeneration companies, and it's a real credit to us and our levels of ambition, but more importantly our area, how wonderful our place is, BCP, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, and the opportunities open to us across this area to be able to attract somebody down to help us on that journey. So I'm really glad that we're getting where we need to be getting to in terms of being able to step back now and move into our sort of our shareholder capacity rather than formal director capacity of that group, that company, and just reflect actually. So we've now got the exemplar in terms of urban regeneration in Lord Bob Kerslake, able to chair the company. We've got the government's former commissioner for Building Better, Building Beautiful, Commissioner Gail Mayhew, as the managing director, and having the people of that calibre working with us, it's no wonder we're now working with Homes England and being labelled as an exemplar in terms of delivering regeneration. So thank you very much for the ambition you brought to this, Phil, and the delivery as well. So delighted to second this and look forward to approving. Just last point, I think it's absolutely right that Lord Kerslake now has the opportunity to shape his board and bring on those non-exec directors. So I'm really glad that we can offer that delegation to him and our Chief Executive Officer to approve those further non-exec directors as well. So great. There we have that proposed and seconded. Do any other members of Council first wish to comment? I'm not seeing that, so we will move to Cabinet colleague. Oh, sorry, apologies. Councillor Enger, would you like to come and join us? Yeah. It's just in the front where Councillor Williams was. Thank you. Councillor Mohan Iyengar.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Cabinet members. I've got a couple of questions, please, on the paper. The first question, they're both linked, but I'm asking them separately, please, and if I get an answer each time. On the first one, I think not for the first time. I think what's being sold in a sense in the story is the, in a sense, undoubted experience eminence of people coming aboard for this. But just as an opener, this remains a council which is owned and the responsibility of elected members and elected members on behalf of residents. So nothing takes away the duty, the responsibility of elected members to ask the right questions and make sure things are done the right way. Nothing takes that responsibility away at all. So my first question, the title of the role is independent chair, but noticeably, and I was a bit concerned to see that the chief executive and the chief operating officer were in charge of the interviewing and making the recommendation of the person, although I do note there was a further step with yourself, Leader, and a couple of others. It does suggest this process that the role reports to the chief exec and operating officer rather than be something independent, and also further on in the paper, also that it's a role geared to the expansionist part of Future Places, with the person bringing new ideas, contacts and potential projects, hence, in other words, an introducer and rainmaker is what struck me from the role, as opposed to a role of independent chair, which to me sounds more like a role to oversee, to scrutinise the business of Future Places and the performance of the directors in it. A role less about expansionism, but more about fiscal oversight, strong governance and closeness to elected members and residents. So it's either the introducer rainmaker or it's the overseer and scrutineer. Those two things seem to go in quite different directions. Which of the two is it, please?
Could we take both questions up front and then we'll Councillor Broadhead will respond.
So that was my first question. So which is the orientation of the role? That's my first question, please.
If you've got a further question, so let's land both questions, and then what we tend to do, we've tended to only allow somebody to speak once, so I'd rather do it both, and then we can bring it back. So thank you, Mohan. We will come back on that question.
Okay, on the second question then is that once the leader and deputy leader have left the board, Future Places will be a council-owned entity without any councillor on the board, with the council CEO there, if I read it correctly, only in an observer role, so without the right to challenge, less still have a hand in decision making. There will be no resident or community organisations likewise on the board. Other than papers to full council, which can be many months apart, how is BCP Council now going to keep effective control of Future Places going forward? Taxpayers continue to fund it, but it looks like it's moving further away from our control. What's your response, please?
Councillor Broadhead, thank you.
Yes, thank you to Councillor Iyengar for your questions. And again, thank you when you were portfolio holder for your intensive work on steering Future Places as well, because I think it's only in the position that it's in because we've all been working really close together to make sure that we now have the capacity to do what a lot of other councils don't have the ability to do. Elected members are at the heart of absolutely everything we do, and I completely agree. However, what we do with our council-owned companies is that the whole reason of getting them in is to be able to recruit some independent and objective people to give that steer. However, all of the decisions that any brought to council in any fashion are ultimately for elected members to make. So fundamentally, any proposals that come through from Future Places will come to Cabinet and to full council. It's entirely within our remit to say we don't agree with that. However, having said that, and having spoken to both the Future Places team and also to the incoming, hopefully the incoming chair, I think he in particular is really keen that we have a really symbiotic relationship, ongoing member seminars, ongoing meetings with ward councillors where there is things happening in wards, to make sure that the proposals that come through from Future Places are driven by the experience that we have within Future Places, and not just driven by what we as councillors think is the right thing to do arbitrarily from any scheme, but also are doing so taking into account the very firm ideas that we may have as councillors. And then our job is to then look at those proposals and to make sure that, see whether we agree with them. And of course, there may be times when we don't agree with the proposals that come forward, but better to have that option come forward with the people that have put a tremendous amount of time and effort in to look at it. And again, I think many members and many community groups will attest to the intense amount of work that the Future Places team have been doing with the community and stakeholder groups as well. The charrette processes that they've been running throughout all of their project inception stages, the 360-degree consultation is of a scale of nothing I've ever seen before. Takes a little bit longer time, but when we're talking about a place-based approach over a longer period and getting this right, I think it's absolutely critical that they do take the time to make sure that the proposals that they bring forward to us for our consideration and approval are absolutely ones that have been done in collaboration, both with elected members but also with the communities as well. The proof of the pudding's in the eating, and I think we've already seen it in the projects that are coming forward. There was a huge stakeholder exercise in Poole Quay and Poole Town yesterday, which a number of opposition councillors only this morning were saying was really fruitful. We're being listened to, and proposals are now coming forward. With regard to the role of the independent chair being focused on expansionism, I don't really understand where Councillor Inger is getting that from. We've got our huge number of projects within there already. I think that the role of the independent chair is, as he said, to hold the paid members of Future Places to account, but also to make sure that the wealth experience that he has and the incoming other non-executive directors are coming in as well, do both scrutinise, but also give added value to what already is a very full entity. So I don't think it's about expansionism at all. I absolutely think it's about providing that best balance of scrutiny, but also added value. Finally, the board makeup in the future. I think what we've taken a lot of advice on this about how best to make sure that board has a right balance of independence, so that we're not just driving it to what I may think at any time, or Drew may think, or anybody who sat in the chair at that time. So it has that level of experience and independence, but to make sure that we are still guiding it as a council. That's why we've got extensive documents as part of the BCP Future Places business plan, which will continue to evolve, which shows a very, really tightly controlled commissioning plan. So we commission Future Places. We give them a very firm direction of travel for what we want them to go and do. We are then stakeholders, and we will have those continued stakeholder engagement sessions so that we continue to make sure that happens. And then again, they bring forward proposals. The only other way to do it is, as Councillor Inger said, he was worried about we are losing control of Future Places. But it's not about control. I actually think people would be more worried if we set up a council-owned company that by necessity was fully municipally owned but had a little bit of independence, and then we completely eroded that independence by only doing what we thought was the right thing to do at the time. So it's a delicate balance, but Bob has done this many times before, and I think he is absolutely the right person to tread that tightrope as we go forward. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'll bring you back in, Councillor Wenger. And just to, from my, this is a part question to me, I think, in there as well. So, yeah, I was really pleased that that when in my discussions with Lord Kerslake, he was keen to look at effective governance review, which talked about some of the things that Councillor Broadhead has gone through, because he wants to strengthen and as do we, the wider member involvement as well. And I know there was a conversation with the leader of the opposition before he accepted the post as well. So we are we're doing that. And I just sort of a comment as much on my sort of professional experience really as councillor experience, but I think the role of the managing director, CEO, and the chair is pretty well trodden. It's to do both, isn't it? It is to do that challenge and also support effectively. You don't need somebody of the calibre of Lord Kerslake to come in to take this role and not have try and move the agenda forward and support the executive in that agenda. But it's also absolutely the chair's responsibility to test and challenge, you know, what's going as well. So I think it's both. And to be absolutely clear, we do make you know, all the decisions as a council ourselves. So I don't see there being a deficit member, but it is, you know, absolutely right that they have the opportunity to work independently from us, you know, as they bring stuff back to us. We don't typically allow people to come back, but I'm more than happy to do that in this instance. And thank you for attending in person. So if you could just put everything in this one last go, and then we'll move on. But Councillor Wenger.
I do, thank you. It'll be very quick. I just must come back on the point about expansionist and where did Councillor Wenger get that from. I wouldn't have come up with it unless I'd seen it actually in the paper. So it was there, and what was completely missing in the paper is the role, the importance in the role of that overview, that scrutinising, that fiscal responsibility. It was missing, hence my question. Thank you very much, Leader.
Yeah, and that's appreciated. Wenger. And actually, can I just put a record thanks to all the members that attended the All Councillor session yesterday evening. We had some really great feedback from it. And delighted the work that is going on under Future Places. And I think more the members get to see it and see what it's doing, and the fact that we're not, you know, we're doing more than just looking at developing and building some sites. We're trying to build places. You know, we're trying to, you know, bring really innovative solutions, you know, forward, and really add some real colour and vibrancy to our place. I'm sure the more people see about the better that will be received. Okay, so I've got the monitoring officer would like to come in. Susan.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just feel that I need to correct a statement that Councillor Broadhead has just made about control not being an element of the relationship between the council and BCP Future Places. As BCP Future Places is a technical company, control is one of the really important legs on which it needs to stand, and we have to satisfy that test of control, otherwise it won't have the other benefits of a tech company. So I just felt I needed to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clarification. I think there's a nuance in that, which I'm sure Councillor Broadhead would like to come back on. Phil.
Yes, and thank you very much to the monitoring officer for that clarification. He's absolutely right. You know, under the TECL, particularly when it comes to kind of the finances and procurement and things like that. My point was about the strategy. You know, it is fruitless to bring a selection of people in who have the level of experience in this sector that, you know, about proper placemaking and then to tell them what we think they should do as their job. So my point wasn't about control, financial control or anything like that being outsourced. It was absolutely about making sure that the people that we've come in and have come in specifically because they believe in the cause and they believe in what we're doing, that we give them the freedom to bring forward proposals that are independent proposals, that are not just purely directed by us. And I think chairs will see from the first tranche of projects that are coming forward and outline business cases from Future Places, you know, I love regeneration. It's in my blood, and I really believe in it and what it can bring to the area. I never in my wildest dreams would have come up with some of the proposals that they're coming forward with, which, like any good proposals, then seem so obvious when they come forward. And that's only possible because we have given that relative independence and not exerted that strategic control over them. So absolutely fine. So delighted to bring this forward to Cabinet. Hope for approval. One last point, Bob agreed to come on board as the independent chair, not through any arbitrary reason, but because he absolutely believes in the central aim of Future Places and making sure that placemaking is at the heart of the regeneration company. And he's also commented that he hasn't ever seen a regeneration company that has that singular focus. It's not just about delivery of number of units or getting cranes in the sky. It is about making our place better across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. That's why he's joining us.
Great, we're really excited. So thank you very much. Do we have any member of the Cabinet wishing to come in on this? I'm not seeing that, so I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's great. Okay, so now we will move on to, and again, I believe it's you, Councillor Broadhead. It's agenda item 8, which is Wessex Field site. Just to let everybody know, the next item I'll be taking will be, after this will be agenda item 10. We'll take the council new build and acquisition strategy at the end of the agenda, where we have the 2 DPIs in place. So moving on now to agenda item 8, which is Wessex Fields.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A relatively simple paper. As people know, we acquired the Wessex Fields site back prior to LGR, with the aspirations to take forward both an employment-led zone around Meditech, working really closely with the emerging growing hospital, which is now University Hospitals Dorset, and also, as an aside, to look at some alleviation of some of the traffic concerns in that area as well. And it's why we made a firm political commitment when we acquired the site, that whilst it is very much employment led and to further those aspirations for our hospital partners, we would also use that opportunity to make sure that any roads that went through the site were actually fully connected. In our period in opposition, I think the thinking on that changed. However, I'm delighted to reaffirm that commitment, and with this paper to keep the job going. What we're doing here, as colleagues will remember, we worked really closely with University Hospitals Dorset, who I'll now refer to as UHD because it's a bit less of a mouthful, when we first came into administration, to dispose part of the Wessex Fields site so that they could get on and deliver their expansion as well. And as part of that agreement, we had a commitment to keep on improving the infrastructure and to link through. This paper is fulfilling that agreement to continue the road that already links through to the north side of the site, to bring it further through the site, which also helps us to really get on as we look to unlock the rest of the Wessex Fields site as well. So it does two things. First of all, it agrees that contractual agreement with commitment with UHD to help join their land up properly and their expansion through to the A338, and also then helps to unlock the rest of the site, which is currently being looked at by our Future Places team. A lot of work going on behind the scenes on that, and I'm pretty confident that in only the next couple of months we'll have more to bring forward to Cabinet around what the next steps will be for the rest of the Wessex Fields site. I would again pay tribute to not only the UHD team but also the Future Places team for bringing together some of the wider conversations that are happening with the landowners there. On the face of it, it looks quite simple. We own a chunk of land, the hospital owns a chunk of land, and then you've got the retired nurses' home site on there as well. So 3 landowners, but there's always many more people involved, particularly when you're doing infrastructure improvements as well. It is complicated, but the level of professionalism they brought to that conversation, working really closely with our council team, particularly Sarah Longthorpe, who has been exemplary throughout this process, has really upped the ante and turned the dial. So this paper is committing, and there is a confidential appendix with the numbers in, which we can go below the line if colleagues want to discuss. Hopefully we don't have to. Is to approve the construction of the link road as detailed in the confidential appendix, and to look at that funding from our approved futures fund, which has all been agreed. And not only will this fulfill our commitment to UHD, enable them to get on with their really quite amazing expansion. Anybody that's walked up there recently and seen the cranes in the sky knows that not only are they really upping the ante in terms of the offer that they're going to be going there, but have been really financially enabled by our government as well to enable that expansion, which I think is pretty central for the health provision across Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole, and indeed the extended area, and also enables us to have that final connection so that we can then fully unlock the site, and plans for that hopefully coming in the next few months. So in summary, really pleased that what was once the road to nowhere is rapidly becoming not just a road to somewhere, but somewhere quite exciting. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I've got Councillor Dove is for the second. Bobby.
Yes, thank you. Just if you indulge, just some background. The Westfield scheme received planning permission after a rather robust and consultative process. It was an incredibly lengthy special planning meeting, and actually the scheme itself crossed the desk of the then Secretary of State. And rather explicably and without explanation, the scheme was then paused by the previous administration. It was done without any consultation with the residents of Littledown and Iford. And in short, we all became very sad to see how the Lib Dem then administration abandoned this area which they've left as fellow wasteland. And sadly, it's the very first thing that visitors see as they come both into the town of Bournemouth and also into the conurbation. I've lost count as ward councillor for many emails received by Littledown and Iford residents who are aghast by the actions of the Unity Alliance. And to be honest, they feel rather let down by this previous administration. So therefore, I really am delighted to second this paper today, not only as planning portfolio holder, but also as ward councillor, and to see this scheme being progressed and delivered. And at last, the Unity Alliance's embarrassing road to nowhere finally has a purpose and becomes this Conservatives administration road of opportunities. Construction of this road unlocks benefits to the entire conurbation, which are countless. It further enhances the close working partnership we have with hospitals and the university. It brings about investment, greater health outcomes, scientific innovation and research. And more importantly, it brings about the opportunity to attract the very best doctors and academics to the area. So yes, I'd like to second this paper. I have been asked by my ward councillor colleague, Lawrence Williams, to record his support for the paper, but I believe he's here, so I'm sure he'd be delighted to speak for himself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so I have got Councillor Williams looking to speak. So if you could come up, and then we've got Councillor Hadley, and just to absolutely endorse what you've put there, Bobby, for very powerful seconding, and fully agree with the comments you've made. Perhaps I can now bring in Councillor Williams and Lawrence.
Thank you. And now I'm speaking as ward councillor for Littledown and Iford, an area that I've represented for many years. And for many years, residents have asked for relief for Castle Lane. And finally, we can see on the horizon that very relief. I've seen ambulances struggling to get to the hospital from accidents on the Wessex Way. I've seen people jammed in their cars for almost hours on end. And this will give us the opportunity to stop all of that and even save lives with the possibility of ambulances coming straight off the Wessex Way into the hospital. So I wholeheartedly still support this, and I pledged at the beginning of the electoral cycle to the residents of Littledown with Councillor Dove that we would have the road, and we're getting closer. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Now as well, and then perhaps give Councillor Broughton the right to come back at the end of the discussion. Andy.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, Castle Lane East is one of the largest roads in the area. It's permanently gridlocked, and it's a really good example of induced traffic. The more you build really large roads, the more traffic you will induce. And what the Unity Alliance were attempting to do was to break that cycle. This isn't going to unlock the problems in Castle Lane East. It's actually going to mess because more people will feel entitled to drive to site and get stuck in the traffic. In January 2020, as part of the discussions relating to this, meetings between us, the hospital, and Bournemouth University, I had an email from the relevant director at the council saying he was very clear that we shouldn't be paying for the access road to the hospital. This isn't, by the way, going to relieve the traffic. This is literally about access to the back of the site for staff and ambulances only. So the March 2021 report from your administration, shortly after you'd taken over, which said that the council would fund the road, was a really unwelcome surprise. In the report you have in front of you, paragraph 34 says that the BCP will fund the road to the back of the hospital site, despite us having sold that area to UHD. And yet paragraph 35 says that UHD will fund the necessary highway infrastructure works. Those are completely in opposition to each other. From what I see, I think the difference is clearly shown in the diagrams, which are Appendix 2 and Appendix 3. Appendix 2 was a narrow road that hugged the boundary fence and gave UHD parameters directly from the southbound spur road, mostly actually ambulance coming in from Hampshire, of course, rather than from Dorset. And as I recall, the barrier was to be provided by them. Appendix 3 is an entirely different beast. It's roundabout and was already urgently to be built a couple of years ago at more cost than was planned. And I haven't had time to go and see exactly where the current works stop. But this design is to the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges standard, which is intended for trunk roads and motorways. It's not to the Urban Manual for Streets design, which would not be supporting the huge roundabout and putting pedestrians and cyclists into conflicts on shared pavements. It's got speculative side roads in it to units that have not yet been planned, and it certainly doesn't provide the link road that the ward councils have said passionately they want to see. This doesn't bode well for a people-friendly, health-focused campus. We did, as the Unity Alliance, have a very wide consultation with people who welcomed the science park, welcomed care facilities, and welcomed key worker housing, but they didn't well split between people who were keen on having a road driven through the middle of it, which will render all of those things far less pleasurable. Looking at design, I wonder how many days the NPR, the automated number plate recognition feature in the middle of the road at the entrance to the hospital will survive before being crashed into. It's a ridiculous design right in the middle of the road. But more than that, the costs. I won't stray into the figures in the annex, but they have more than doubled from what they were originally, and they now significantly exceed the purchase price for the land that we have transferred to you at Dorset. It is to a public sector partner, but how can this be good value for the taxpayer, for us to effectively be paying them to take over the land? Importantly, we should be ensuring that the developments adjacent to the road cover these costs. But given the fragile financial state of the council, ONS recommended suspending investment through the Futures Fund. This deal will, I suggest, get significant scrutiny from the Ministry for poor investment, and I hope the Section 151 officer will closely consider it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hadley. What I'll do now is I'll bring Councillor Rice in, who's indicated, and then give Councillor Broadhead the opportunity to come back. Councillor Rice.
Thank you very much. The University Hospital Dorset Board unanimously supported the adoption of a low carbon strategy, which Richard Renaud, Chief Strategy Officer, described as a watershed strategy that will shape the way we get to work, who we like, becoming a net 2040. Combine that with 75 out of 76 councillors leading BCP Council declaring a climate emergency, target of being carbon neutral by 2030 for the council workings. Indeed, when I spoke to the head of estates for Bournemouth Hospital 3 years ago, we discussed how building a road would reach capacity within 5 years. Well, I mean reach capacity 5 years. I asked, and he agreed, I asked what he would do after 5 years once the new road was congested and causing nurses to be blocked in the site after a time. And he said, well, I asked, why don't you want buses now? Well, we haven't been offered any buses, anything to do with buses. After walking infrastructure too, do you want more people cycling? Yes, was the answer. Yet, as I can see, as we can see, no one seems to be walking and cycling, so that congestion is in the hospital and surrounding sites. Yet, as we can see, we are doing the same as we have done for the last 4 decades, building more and more private cars, creates more congestion. As described in Insanity is to do the same again and again and expect a different outcome. Building more roads to this site and through this site, and building a flyover, which is suggested in the paper through Greenbelt, will not make it easy for people to use the bus. It will just make congestion worse and more unreliable, as we have seen the last 4 decades. And it certainly doesn't fit with either of the UHDs or BCP. The recent council marketing for the sky with polluting aircraft, whilst we tell it to please use the bus. Here, let's invest millions in building a new road through this site for rat running, whilst asking everyone to risk their lives while walking to the site, or to use the bus while prices rise and they also become stuck in congestion to facilitate. So the site would be delivered by, for example, a rapid bus transit. Yet this council is determined not to enable residents to be able to travel sustainably. As Albert Einstein said, I feel.
Councillor, it might be worth just in terms of closing. If you turn your camera off, because you are just buffering a little bit at the end there. So if you had further things to say, I would encourage you perhaps to draw that to a conclusion if you could. But if you maybe like to continue and finish.
Okay. Well, my last were Einstein again and again is, and that's what I feel this is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We did get most of that, so hopefully that would be useful. Okay, so I'm now going to forever open to the rest of Cabinet to comment on. So if I first have Councillor Judy Butt. Jude.
Thank you very much, Leader. The BCP agreed our community engagement and consultation strategy last September 21. And as we all know, because I'm sure we've all read it, it relates to the entire working relationship with Council and our partners, and how we integrate with our residents on key documents. And it's an absolute golden thread with regard to consultation in our public engagement process. Now, item 14 of our report, Wessex Field redevelopment, there is stated with regard to future places engagement update with external stakeholders and also the Friends of the Retired Nursing Home nearby. However, that seems to be its entirety, and there doesn't seem to be an extremely large consultation process going forward. I know the work in the past has been that sits for itself. It's iterated clearly in all reports. Going on to item 20, with regard to consultation of the report, ward councillors were consulted. We've heard from one of the ward councillors today on the 16th December 2020. We've had COVID in between, but that's almost 2 years ago. So my question is, what further engagement is possible? What further engagement can take place going forward to cover all aspects of this recommendation and in keeping with our community engagement and consultation strategy September 21? Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Thank you very much. That's great. I'll now move to Councillor Mark Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. Unlike the previous non-Cabinet members, I support the scheme. I support it on behalf of my residents who are also adjacent to the hospital site, and we welcome anything that was going to relieve the traffic along Castle Lane East. We're quite regularly people are stuck trying to get onto the Wessex Way from my ward to get to the hospital, and we have people stuck at the roundabouts. And as Councillor Williams has said, it can take 40 minutes plus to just get from that roundabout into the hospital. So anything that would do and help ease the congestion, I very much welcome, and I'm sure my residents who live surrounding the roads leading onto the Wessex Way and to the hospital would also welcome it. So I am going to be supporting the recommendation. I'm quite happy to do that.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Bobby Dart and then Councillor Mike Green. So Bobby first.
Thank you, and thank you for all those that have contributed so far. I think we just have to set on record that this hospital caters for residents that reside from Poole all the way over to Leamington, and their relatives come from further afield to visit. I find it interesting to hear that insane or references to insane decision making. I think this further promotes the previous Unity Alliance stance of concentrating and pushing their rather overbearing promotion of cycling and catching a bus in order to attend the hospital. I think this demonstrates that they don't really truly understand the need of our population who attend the hospital. And I think further it demonstrates that their anti-car mantra is going to be pushed upon us, even if it negatively affects the outcomes and at the expense of people and their health.
Okay, now come to Councillor Mike Green. Mike.
Thanks very much, Leader. And I want to follow up on that there. I had my mouth open while Councillor Rice was speaking, but I think it really demonstrates the difference between our approach and the approach of the previous administration. Our approach is a pragmatic one. It's one where we have continued to deliver on active travel. The paper that will be coming forward in a few minutes that I'll be delivering is one that promotes bus travel and will go further than that towards public transport. We all recognise the problem with congestion and we are looking at a way to solve that sustainably. But a dogmatic approach is one which says cars have to be stopped, minimise the cars in any way you can. And the idea that by reducing or limiting the road space available is what's going to cure congestion is just absolute fantasy. A pragmatic approach says, yes, we want to deal with this as sustainably as, yes, we want to move as many people as we can onto public transport, onto cycling and to walking. But yes, we recognise that some people will have, and the more room that you can give them to do so, the more routes you can do so, less will be the congestion which is choking our 3 down. And I distance myself further from what Councillor Rice is saying. I support this paper and I'd speak further on it if I was in the room. This makes sense, and I very much hope that the ambition which we've had expressed from Councillor Williams and from Councillor Dove, that the road should be open to all traffic, so that no longer does so much that comes in from, as Councillor Hadley says, from Hampshire, have to go all the way down to the Cooperdene roundabout or further before turning around. That is what doesn't make sense. The road through this does make sense, as does the opportunity for the hospital and to be able to receive both its goods, if you like, and its customers by car or by bus as required. So I absolutely support this, and we do not support what we heard from Councillor Rice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. So that's all of everybody who's shown. So I'll now move back to Councillor Broadhead, if I may, to sum up. Phil.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all colleagues for the discussion. I'll go through some of the points in turn, starting from the back. First of all, thank you to Cabinet colleagues for the support for the paper, and I share many of your views. Councillor Butt raised the point about engagement, which is absolutely critical to the future plans of the Wessex Field site. She highlights paragraph 14 about the engagement we've done about this bit, which is just the road. And it has been fairly limited, because actually what we're doing here is following the original layout, which was all consulted on before. So it's a continuation of what we always planned, and this paper is not about anything new. It's just about the delivery of the agreed road layout. However, the following paragraph in the paper, paragraph 15, talks about the next stage of the wider plan for Wessex Fields, and indeed that Future Places will hopefully be holding a design charrette in 2022. And as we've seen from these charrettes, which are extended workshops, there'll be a tremendous amount more engagement about the final plans for what comes next. So and you and your role will be absolutely central to that. So thank you for bringing it up. What this paper is, however, is just about essentially building an agreed road, important though that is. Many of my colleagues have spoken about the comments from both Councillor Hadley and Councillor Rice, many of which I agree with. I do not think, going first of all to Councillor Hadley's point, that this is a binary choice. You can absolutely mitigate traffic problems, whilst, as Councillor Green has said, making sure that the active travel and the choice that people can have is pretty central as well. It is not one or the other. And indeed, I referenced this in earlier conversations about Wessex Fields. I remember the very first meeting we had when we acquired the Wessex Fields site. We brought together partners from what was then the CCG and the universities and then the Royal Bournemouth Hospital. The central to the ambition of that was making this a sustainable transport hub, and that is absolutely still, I think, critical to part of it, so that people that can get around in more sustainable ways have the choice to do so efficiently, safely and cheaply. You can do that whilst also recognising the reality that we live in, which is that we've got a hugely expanding hospital here. It's seeing around £250 million of investment to provide the ongoing healthcare needs, not just for our part in East Dorset, but also further afield, as Councillor Rice has pointed out, kind of West Hampshire and also actually parts of West Dorset as well, in terms of what they're taking on here. So it's absolutely critical that people can get there. And I understand that roads do get full, but Councillor Rice seemed to be suggesting that the answer to the fact that roads may get full in the future is just don't build them in the first place, and just make more people cycle, almost kind of to force people into that position. Well, that's might be understandable in sustainable locations in the centre of city locations where you're building maybe, you know, more residential apartments for young people. But we're talking about a hospital here where people go to have major operations, minor operations, and nurses and doctors that have to get to work. And I think it's absolutely right that we address the situation that we've got now and deal with that. Banning people from their cars to go to hospital, I sincerely look forward to seeing how that lands when they put that on the front of their election material. It's certainly not what I'll be putting on ours. And I do recall before, when we were not in administration, Councillor Hadley having an intervention in the then planning permission for the hospital's expansion and suggesting that their car parking should be curtailed as well. And absolutely, we want to provide sustainable travel options to people, but people have to get to hospital, and we want to support them. My final point, Chair, Councillor Rice seemed very fond of bringing out Einstein quotes today, two of them actually. Well, I've got an Einstein quote of my own, which is actually related to bicycles, our favourite subject, which is that life is like riding a bicycle. To keep balance, you must keep moving. Well, we must keep moving with this project. We must let people keep moving by absolutely being able to get to bloody hospital. And I'm really keen and really proud that this paper keeps this moving, as Einstein suggested.
Thank you very much, and yeah, really appreciate the discussion we've had on this, and the support of colleagues for the paper. Okay, great. So that's all of the hands we've seen. So I'll move to the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's great and unanimous. Okay, so let's move forward now to I'm not taking agenda item 9. I'm going to take that later. So we're going to move now to agenda item 10, which is the BCP Green Infrastructure Strategy, and I'll come to Councillor Mark Anderson to introduce it. Mark.
Thank you, Leader. The Green Infrastructure Strategy is a top-level document, and it supports a whole raft of other strategies, and it will also form part of the local plan. The GI strategy has also been funded for us by the Future Parks project, which is the National Lottery Heritage Fund, National Trust and DLAC. So we're getting this for a zero cost. It's also an important document as it sets out our green infrastructure, its benefits for people, communities, wildlife, their health and the local economy. We've had a lot of evidence for this. We've got done over 400 site audits. We've had a public survey. We've used detailed GIS mapping just to make sure we've got the correct data for it. But one of the most important things that comes out of it for me is the natural capital report that details the value of our open spaces in social economic terms, puts a value on each visit to a green space. The report shows that BCP Parks receive an estimated 9.7 million recreational visitors per year. And this results in a £231 million per annum in gross benefits to local communities, £209 million per annum in health benefits, and this averages £20 per visit. There are also links in this paper to forthcoming pieces of work such as our tree and woodland strategy, play strategy, and the urban design guide, which we're working on as well. But one of the other things I want to raise is that we agreed earlier this year the Biodiversity Net Gain Task Force recommendations, and these, along with the strategy, will help us develop the Biodiversity Net Gain policy, which is another leg to the local plan. So I hope everyone will support this. It's a really good strategy. It explains an awful lot about how we're going to be able to use our green open spaces, and I think it's a very good and succinct document, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. It's really helpful. Councillor Broadhead, I believe you're seconding.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Delighted to second this paper. This is a really exciting paper. We live in an absolutely fantastic area, and having a proper plan about green infrastructure is not only necessary for protecting it, but also making sure, as part of our last discussion, that we've got great ways for people to connect with nature and to get around. 3 points that I would like to raise. First of all, there is formal need for this paper as well. Within paragraph number 3 in this paper, this points out that by Cabinet approving the recommendation for this green infrastructure strategy, that then becomes part of the local plan evidence base. We're working on our new local plan for the BCP region, and it means that at a later date we don't need to do a supplementary planning document or a separate adoption. So it's critical to that formal process of the local plan. So it kind of ticks that box as well. Not just about box ticking, but it is absolutely necessary. Secondly, and colleagues would have heard me wax lyrical about biodiversity net gain, but this is pretty central to what we are doing within our real trend-setting biodiversity net gain aspirations in this area, and it feeds really well into those papers, as Councillor Anderson has pointed out. A reminder, we earlier on, only a few months ago, approved our biodiversity net gain policy, which builds on the work of the Environment Act as passed by the Conservative government in November in 2021, but goes even further and embeds the necessity for any planning application that comes forward to comply with a 20% uplift in biodiversity net gain over a 30-year period. And I believe we are the first upper tier authority in the whole country to embed that as part of policy. So we are the #1 leading authority to protect our biodiversity, wildlife, whilst continuing our obvious ambition to keep on building homes. And I'm delighted, Chair, to update that becomes part of the validation checklist for all planning permissions this week. So we are officially biodiversity live. Woohoo! Go insects. So that is now all in place as well. But then finally, and I think it's worth looking through the strategy for those that have a little bit of time, because not only is it really full with all the detail, but on page 5 of the strategy itself, which is on page 149 of our papers, it gives a really helpful visual summary of the Green Net strategic plan. And not only, I think, is that a really helpful visual summary of our area, but also looks at all of the really important thinking that's gone through to connecting our green spaces, our coastal nature park, our 15 miles of coastline, the Stour Valley Park, that our aspiration is to connect there as well. But also reminds me, looking at it, what a fantastic place we live in. We've got the sea on one side of us, and I said coastline, two harbours, and all of the green space that is associated with that. But then we are surrounded by 22 sites of special scientific interest. I don't know anywhere else that has on its borders 22 triple SIs. And whilst they're important in terms of preserving our wildlife and green spaces, they also present a really good opportunity for people to get out and connect with nature. And as we move towards a more sustainable future, to protect the amazing green environment that we live in, helps us to do that as well. So a really helpful diagram there that I think puts in a visual form where we live, what our aspiration is, and how we're very, very fortunate to be surrounded by not only such amazing spaces, but with Councillor Anderson's leadership, some really joined up plans for how we're going to connect with them.
Great, thank you very much for that. For a really in-depth introduction from both of you. Okay, so let's now move to wider members of council, and first I have Councillor Andy Hadley. Andy.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry, it's me again. I think it's a good paper, a good plan. I'm concerned that with the climate emergency, though, that most of the delivery framework has timescales set for the long term. It's increasingly urgent that we do good things in the short term to mitigate the lack of climate action to date. And I think that's really important. I'm pleased to see keeping the conurbation cool in there. We need a campaign on getting more street trees and green borders. I also believe that we need to engender a better attitude towards succession planning with trees, not relying on dwindling numbers of individual trees living to great age and then having to be taken down, but actually planning succession. Some of the green connections are not showing, and I'm interested to ensure that we promote the connectivity and access, the trailways concept, in terms of low carbon travel. Some of the SANG seem to have been missed opportunities so far in this regard, particularly along the Stour Valley corridor. I'm concerned that whilst it's termed a green and blue strategy, there's little in there about water, the water quality, flood mitigation, and obviously clearly we need to do a lot of work across the border with Dorset, Hampshire and even Wiltshire on that because of the way the water tables go. It's really interesting in the consultation element to see that Poole Park was most mentioned in the consultation, and particularly stopping the through traffic through the park as a key element. It's not highways land, and that could very easily be done by the council. I do hope that some of this work can be brought forward more quickly, responding to the climate emergency, as I said, and it's a good use for SIL. Indeed, tying to the previous paper, many staff at Poole Hospital do walk and cycle to site, and improving the greenway links around Royal Bournemouth would help there too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hadley, and we welcome your input. Any member of council is welcome and to attend, and we appreciate the fact that you do regularly. Okay, so do any other members of Cabinet wish to speak? I've got Councillor Kelly-Jane.
Thank you, Leader. This is a fantastic paper. Green spaces in BCP are internationally renowned for their beauty and health enhancing properties. COVID lockdowns have ensured that people appreciated walking in our parks and countryside, perhaps where they may not have done that in the past. We have many activities, walking groups and volunteering opportunities taking place across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole within these areas, often linking the urban, green and coastal areas. This means that everyone of all ages can benefit from the exercise and feeling of well-being without cost, and often within walking or cycling distance of their homes. We know that exercise of any kind is really important for the health and well-being of young and old alike, and exploration into the natural world enriching for our young people. So I'm really supportive of this excellent strategy and all that it means for the amazing place in which we live and for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And just I'll comment myself as well. Actually, I think as part of our, if you look at what this administration has done and is doing, in this subject. So as part of our 100-day plan, literally one of the first things we did was invest significantly in new tree planting. We've then moved forward, future places at the heart of that, a lot of, of urban greening and how we can actually bring more than just development, but place it together. We put £20 million, into our Green Futures Fund as a real commitment, here, and we're leading the country in terms of our biodiversity net gain as well. So I'm really proud that we're actually delivering, and we are delivering on this. So thank you very much, Councillor Anderson, for the leadership on it. I now come to Councillor Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Strategy, I think it's a very valuable document, because we also see all the feedback that was gained from groups and individuals, which I hope will shape the strategy going forward into action planning. I'm also very pleased to see that the seafront, the coastal front, is more or less being seen as a coastal park, because it is our greatest asset in a sense of our sea frontage. But also I hope that we can ensure as far as we can that access to our coastal paths is secured. Certainly in parts of the conurbation it is rather difficult. And I know the portfolio holder is very keen to see that the access arrangements are secured in a safe way, so that we can all enjoy this wonderful part of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well said. Okay, so I'll offer Councillor Anderson the opportunity to come back in and speak to the comments made, and then we'll move to the vote. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. The comment about long-term part of this strategy is because this is an umbrella strategy. This is part of a whole raft of other agreements and strategies that we're going to be developing that are going to go into more detail. Particularly, I thank Councillor Hadley for his comments about trees, but we also have a tree and woodland strategy that we're going to be working on. And I agree with him about the green corridors and the green community routes, but they are actually mentioned in some of the documents if you go into the depth of it. And again, we talk about the development of the Stour Valley Park. So I think that's, again, it's something that we're working on, and I think it's something that we are going to be pushing. And I welcome the comments from the leader about the 100-day planting of the trees. So I think the officers have done a fantastic job on this, and I think I would like to thank publicly, particularly Martin Whitchurch, for the work he's done on this, because without Martin, I think we'd been struggling to get this. And his predecessor, Michael Rowlands, who years ago under BCP, sorry, under Bournemouth Council, also worked heavily moving us in this direction. So I would like to raise and add my thanks to both of them for it. So thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm very happy to join you, and I'm sure all colleagues will. You know, Martin's it's showed some really great enthusiasm and leadership in this area. We're lucky to have him. Okay, so we've got that all the recommendations as put. So all those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you very much. That is passed. I'll move now to agenda item 11, which is the BCP, so the Bus Service Improvement Plan. Technically, I'll be proposing it on a believe Councillor Broadhead, you're seconding. Yep, great, thank you. And then we'll move to Councillor Mike Green, who will introduce the paper. Mike.
Thank you very much, Leader. Last year, in line with requests from government, we made arrangements for an enhanced partnership. And together with our partners, the bus operators, we developed a bus service improvement plan, which was submitted to the Department for Transport. That improvement plan reflected our view that bus travel needs to form a major plank in our proposals to tackle the existing and worsening problem of congestion within BCP. And I'm delighted they were impressed and indicated that would be awarded £8.9 million to progress measures within the plan. Final confirmation of that award any day now. With Cabinet and Council delegation, we formed that enhanced partnership with bus operators and collectively produced a partnership plan and scheme, which details the measures planning to take.
We just lost you there, Councillor Green. Might be worth just taking your video off and see if we can complete there. And maybe if you could go back 10 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you get that we've been awarded £8.9 million to progress that measure, those measures?
We did, and I was delighted to hear it. So if you could take it from there, that would be appreciated.
And we expect final confirmation of that award any day now. With Cabinet and Council delegation, we formed that enhanced partnership with the bus operators, and collectively we produced an enhanced partnership plan and scheme, which details the measures we're planning to take forward to improve the frequency, reliability, speed and affordability of bus travel, which are the factors that have been shown to most influence passenger numbers. And those proposals are now with the DFT to receive their blessing, and depending on their response, there may be a few minor tweaks we need to make, but all indications that those are likely to be very minor. I can also confirm that after the unfortunate failure of yellow buses, that shouldn't affect the plan or scheme at all. It was agreed with all the operators, and it's independent of which operator is delivering which service. Paragraph 9 of the report gives a lot more details of the plan itself, which includes bus priority measures to speed them through, additional bus shelters and real-time information, CCTV at Poole bus station to help passengers feel safe, development of a multimodal, multi-operator journey planner app to include bus operators, South West Railway and Beryl Bike Share, fare capping and other price initiatives, and our hopes to increase the frequency on some routes. But I think it's important to note that the content of the plans and the schemes don't actually form any part of this decision today. The reason that the paper's before us is because of the size of the award at £8.9 million, and that means we've got to ask Council for its approval to go and actually accept that money. And obviously, as required, then delegates decision to the relevant officers and portfolio holder to get on with developing the benefits it's going to bring to all our residents and to active travel in BCP. So I'll leave it there and hope that everyone will support it. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll come first to wider members of Council, and in that we have Councillor Andy Hadley. Morning again, Andy.
Good morning, Leader. Thank you. Yes, as the portfolio holders said, this is £8.8 million. It is over 3 years. As I read the paper, it said up to £8.8 million. So I slightly worry in terms of, you know, are we actually going to get 8.8, or will that get a new Transport Secretary with new priorities? Will we get the full amount? But that said, it's good news and great in terms of bus travel. I think the comment about yellow buses not expected to have major impact is interesting. Certainly our tendered services, which are currently with Excellibus, there have been issues for passengers about not being able to use the same ticket across the buses, and that's clearly it's been a long-held ambition of mine to get that to work, but it's something that and certainly we've seen short-term difficulties and we need to work really hard on. I think the team are to be congratulated, both the internal team and also More Buses took obviously a commercial decision to step into the routes that Yellow Buses took. It does create a very different landscape for us in terms of the future of buses locally. Under section 9, there was something around bus priority at additional 23 junctions. Whilst during COVID, we managed to get some of the signals changed to allow pedestrians not to have to touch buttons and to get a better priority in crossing. And we need to think about the whole journey, which includes the journey for pedestrians to get to the bus stops and home from the end of their journey. And I would say if we're fiddling with the lights, can we also fiddle with them on behalf of pedestrians to give them a better deal, especially when it's raining? The mobility as a service single payment options is brilliant, especially also including train and buses again, and bikes. Again, that's something I've been agitating for a long time. I'm a bit concerned though about the concept of route-specific fare options. My reading of listening to people is that people, non-customers in particular, just want to see cheaper buses overall. You can travel around many European cities for a fixed fee, which is much lower than the cost you spend in our area. And there is obviously work nationally to cap fares, which I hope will feed into this process as well. So it's good news and I support it. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Hadley. Right. Okay, do I have any members of Cabinet who wish to come in? If not, I will immediately bring back in Councillor Mike Green to sum up and then respond to Councillor Hadley. Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't think there's anything that's really needed with summing up per se, but just to address a couple of the points that Councillor Hadley brings up. I agree with most of them. I'm very glad that we've been able to bring this forward. We are reassured that 8.9 million, or actually it's marginally on that, marginally below that, is going to come. I have had private assurances from the Minister. We would expect that. We've been told to expect the agreement in September. So there was actually a chance that it would have been before today. I think that there is a chance that it will be before it comes to council next week. Otherwise, I think it's true to say that I'd be extremely disappointed if it doesn't come through very, very swiftly afterwards and that it would be delivered in full. The original bid was for considerably more than that, as you would expect, but we were delighted with what we were awarded. As far as the fare capping with Zelabus is concerned, that contract is only for a 6-month period. We absolutely will make it clear as we go forward that we would expect any operators to be included within the daily price cap. I do agree with Councillor Hadley that the Conservative government's proposal for a £2 cap on bus fare could be an absolute game changer. At the moment, that seems to be only for a short period of time, but I would hope that the success that it would bring would demonstrate that there is value for both national and local governments to promote bus services, because, as I said, I absolutely believe that this is going to be the way forward for us together with cycling and walking to ensure that we solve the congestion problems as far as we can within BCP. There is a further advantage of the specific route changes, which is that I very much hope that we will prove a success with those, and that we will therefore be able to prove empirically that that by adjusting those fares, we are able to improve the numbers of passengers significantly. That is something that I hope that we're going to be able to demonstrate by it. It will be something which we will be able to use as an example to bus operators. We'll be able to use it when we're looking with them at how we use the partnership to set fares across or to recommend fares across the conurbation. And another assurance that I got from the relevant minister was that lessons that we learn and lessons that others learn from their spending on these bus service improvement plans around the country will all be shared, and a mechanism was set up to do so that everyone can learn from best practice. This is a fantastic opportunity for us. It's not a game changer in itself, but I believe that it is the start and the build up to that game changer that will transform travel over Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, and really exciting to hear that as well, and gets us look forward with some confidence. Okay, so we have that everybody spoken who was indicated. So we have the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, so we now move to agenda item 12, which is the extension of a term of office of the chair of Russell Coates Art Gallery and Museum Management Committee. And I'll ask Councillor Beverley Dunlop to introduce the paper. Beverley.
Thank you, Leader. The Russell Coates Museum and Art Gallery is a charity of which BCP Council is the sole trustee. It therefore operates under two pieces of legislation, which is the Local Government Act and the Charities Act, and they don't really sit well together. They create a number of complexities and difficulties in the operation of the museum. Since 2018, the board have been exploring how we could improve on that, change the governance and create a separate trust. This will enable the museum to operate in a more sustainable way. It will allow it to determine its own future better, fundraising. But it's proven to be quite a complex process. I will be bringing a paper to Cabinet later this year about this externalisation. However, right now we've reached a pivotal moment where all this knowledge of how we can do this sort of coming together, and it's important that we don't lose the experience of some of our board members and that learning, and in particular the erudite chair, Professor Stuart Bartholomew. Largely due to COVID, the committee has been membership is sort of all coming together. We're going to lose 3 out of 4 of them by October. So what I'm asking Cabinet to do today is approve the recommendation in the paper to give a further 3-year term of office to Professor Bartholomew, the current chair, so that we don't lose that knowledge and expertise. And just like to add that it doesn't set any kind of precedent for any other committees. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, and Councillor Kelly, Jane, I'll bring you in to second the paper.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm really happy to second this paper. Having served on that board for a short period of time, and having known Stuart before that as well, absolutely we can see how much he has brought to this board over the last few years, and it would be absolutely dreadful to lose that continuity and that expertise. So I'm very much in favour of this proposal. Thank you. You want to second it? Sorry.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased. I'm very happy to endorse that as well. You know, we talked about Lord Kerslake earlier on in our agenda as a really, exemplar chair. We have absolutely the same with Stuart Bartholomew, and also his knowledge and commitment to the area as well. Really does make him absolutely a fantastic person for this role. So I'm delighted to endorse that. Do I have any members, first of all, wider council to come in? And then any members of Cabinet who would wish to speak to this paper? No, that's great. So, Councillor Dunlop, is there anything you'd like to finish with?
I don't really have anything else to add other than can we please agree to the recommendation of the paper to keep the knowledge in the Russell Coates? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to move to the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. That is, again, unanimous. Thank you. Great. So now I'm going to move back to agenda item 9, which is the Council's new build housing and acquisition strategy. And I believe there's Cabinet members who've just left the meeting, which I've just seen, who had a disclosure of pecuniary interest. Perhaps I could ask Councillor Broadhead to introduce the paper, and then I will second.
Thank you very much, Chair. One year ago, we brought forward the Council New Build Housing and Acquisition Strategy, which is shortened to CNAS, which was designed to fulfil the ambitions in our big plan to turbocharge, for want of a better word, our council house building strategy, make sure that we're providing the right homes through our council house programme, and frankly to do build as many as possible as well. well. And we were criticised, I think, at that point for being probably over ambitious and probably too bold within that, because as a reminder, this is on top of our future places and regeneration plans. So we've got, as we talked earlier on, about £3 billion of GDV of sites of regeneration. A lot of that will include a tremendous amount of new homes for local people as well. But this is just about our council new build housing and our acquisition strategy. So within our big plan, we put forward plans to try and provide 1,000 plus homes by direct council delivery. 1 year on, and particularly through the leadership of our exceptional head of housing delivery, Nigel Ingram, who has just really turned the dial in terms of the professionalism and efforts he's put into this. I'm now pleased that we are very much on track to not just meet that target, but perhaps even to exceed it, Chair. We currently, as this update points out, have about 47 sites in our housing delivery alone. Some of those obviously much further along than others. Some of those are a little speculative at the moment, but around 47. In terms of the homes that we are currently planning as part of those 47 sites, is around 1,500 homes by direct council delivery now. So council homes, 1,500 now planned. And actually, as we've evolved our acquisition strategy side of that, if you add that into the mix, we're at about 1,750. Now, a caveat, not all of those will be delivered immediately. Some of those projects will evolve into others. But I think the fact that 1 year ago, we set the ambition for almost a standing start to say we want to get going and deliver over 1,000 new council homes, and now we're sat here saying we've got at least 1,500 in the pipeline. I think is an exceptional record for this council, in particular Nigel's team. So congratulations to all of them. Within this paper, we've got a few things to do. We've got that little bit of a look back about how the programme is going, and we've also got a number of recommendations to come forward. First of all, one of our major schemes, Princess Road, is now at the final stages of getting spades in the ground, and predominantly through to inflationary pressures, inflationary increases, like any projects, has seen the cost increase a little as well. So this report makes some recommendations in terms of the budget uplift, so that we can now get on and deliver the Princess Road scheme, which is a fantastic scheme, which is a mixed tenure. You've got affordable housing, private rent, and hostel in there as well. So really will provide not just excellent array of housing provision, but also medium and longer term provides cost avoidance from bed and breakfast, and also income generation as well. So I think absolutely right that we now nail that and approve the cost uplift in that, and indeed that is detailed in the confidential report, and under recommendation F we've got options within that, and I will be recommending option 1 as part of that. This also report updates the profile of the acquisitions, 250 street acquisitions known as Programme 4A within the CNAS report. That's now matured as well, particularly as we move towards more temporary accommodation types and larger family homes. So we've got some recommendations and updates around that. We're also now moving forward with some specific private rented sector opportunities as well, some of which are actually income generation ready and could deliver income to the council within this year as well. So absolutely right that we get on and acquire those in some situations, or get on and build them. It's really important for the future financial stability of this council. Also, as the leader of the local plan as well, we've seen from our independent housing needs analysis, the growing need for good quality private rented sector accommodation, because people are leaving it much later to buy their own homes. So we're absolutely stepping into a role within that, and we've seen the success of our private rented sector schemes, in the past as well. And then finally, we've secured some Homes England capital grants. We need to approve that we are able to execute them as part of the agreement we've got with Homes England as well. So a lot within this paper, but I think that the summary is 1 year ago we started with this. We've now got almost 50 sites in our housing delivery plan, 1,500 homes that we're building, 1,700 in total, including the acquisitions. And with this paper and hopefully Cabinet's approval, we can get on, start delivering a few of those, including Princess Road. There is one final point within the acquisition for 4A, as I mentioned. It talks about increasing the provisional budget so that the team can be working on that. But of course, each one of these will be subject to council approval and sign off. So we're not technically signing off at this stage that spend. What we are saying is that that ambition is progressing as the opportunities arise, and we will continue to bring back regular updates to this process. Final point, as we are going through the acquisitions side of this as well, and the team are working really hard on that. We may come across situations where some of those acquisitions involve people that are either employed by the council or elected members. So we've now got further delegation to the chief executive to agree a process for securing an independent assessment of value for money if any of those situations arise, so that we're absolutely covered that if there was a potential conflict of interest, we've got the confidence through the chief exec and his team that it's either the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, with a complete wall between those decisions and those which it may affect. So I think a great work from Nigel and his team, and looking forward to seeing what the update will be next year as well, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, but brilliant, and really pleased to second this. Technically, Karen Rampton, his name is on his paper, but she's away today, so I'm delighted to second it. And just to tease out again, delivery, isn't it? And that's exactly, we've seen it a number of times throughout today, and really pleased to see that in his paper as well. Okay, do any wider members of council wish to come in? I'm not seeing that, so then I go to cabinet colleagues and have first Councillor Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader. At Homes England, under the Affordable Homes Programme 2021-2026, are in a position to give grant funding of over £1 million to BCP, in fact £1,050,000. This is extremely good news because Homes England have recognised the really dynamic approach that BCP are taking to address the need for affordable housing and housing stock under their control. This is extremely good news for the future programmes, as well as they will have a clear indication as to the processes and the capability of BCP delivering new homes. Very welcome. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Okay, do I have any other members of Cabinet wishes to speak? I've got Hazel Allen. Hazel, welcome.
Morning, and thank you, Leader, for allowing me to speak. I'd just like to say that I'm delighted to see this come forward. We need to own more of our own stock. We need to reduce our reliance on bed and breakfast and hotels, and we need to be able to bring people forward into settled accommodation as quickly as possible, especially with the challenges that we're all facing with cost of living. So I'd just like to say thank you for the hard work of all the officers, and it's lovely to see more accommodation coming under our remit. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely echo that. Well said. Okay, I don't have any other councillors wishing to contribute now, so I will move to the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Great, that's really positive and again unanimous. Right, okay, so then that moves us back to the agenda, which is agenda item 13, urgent decisions taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Constitution. I've been informed of none, and there are none. And agenda item 14, the Cabinet Forward Plan. So happy to advise that a updated version of the Forward Plan has recently been published, and a copy has been circulated as a supplement to this agenda. Do I have any comments on that? I do not. So thank you everybody for your contributions today. A huge amount of business being conducted. We've got another meeting of Cabinet at the back end of this month, which I look forward to. And thank you everybody, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye bye.